Welcome back, everyone, to Learn to Read Biblical Hebrew. This series is designed for the absolute beginner, someone that has no background in linguistics or Semitic languages. And we have gone through 5 lessons, and today we begin number 6. We're going to talk about the noun, but before we do, I'd like to briefly talk about some funny letters that are known as the guttural letters, along with the letter resh. So the guttural letters are Aleph, He, Chet, Ayin, and then there's one that I want to talk about that's similar but not a guttural letter, and that is resh. And the big thing that you want to remember is they can't be doubled. So let's take what we learned about the definite article in an earlier lesson, He, Patach, and a Dagesh forte. That's how you form the definite article. So if you were to put this on, for example, the word davar, you would write He, Pathak or Patach, and then put a doubling dot in there. And if you were to divide that into syllables, you would have a CVC here, and you would have a doubled radical here. So $1 would be going this way to close that syllable, and $1 would be going that way to start the second syllable. So you'd have a CVC, and then a CV, and a CVC. However, when it comes to guttural letters cannot be doubled. For example, with the very common word ish. Ish starts with an aleph. If you were to put the definite article He, then try to put the patach and the doubling dot, the aleph resists it, and now you are stuck with a letter that will not double, so you don't have a consonant that will come that direction to close this syllable. Because of that, you have to divide the syllable here. So now you are in a position where you have an open, unaccented syllable, which, as we know, requires a long vowel. So what will happen is, to compensate for that, this patach, pathak, will become a comets. So that's what happens. Because you cannot have that aleph doubled, the pathak will go to a comets. It will lengthen. So now you have an open, unaccented syllable with the long vowel that it needs. So this is one of the effects of guttural letters. They cannot be doubled, and so you have to have this thing called compensatory lengthening. There are times that you will have something that's called virtual doubling. So let's take the word chokhmah. Chokhmah. This is a guttural letter. If you try to put the definite article on it, it won't take the dagesh. However, this pathak will not lengthen. This will be the form that you get. Ha-chokhmah. And what they say is that you have virtual doubling. You have a virtual chet going this way and a virtual chet going that way, but it doesn't show up in the writing system. So this is called virtual doubling. So you will see this at times. Sometimes that pathak will not lengthen to a comets. Now, of course, there are many other rules and changes that take place because of guttural letters, but there's one more that I'd like to talk about, and that's called quiescent letters. And the big one that we see is a quiescent aleph. This one will happen all the time. So in the word reshit, you see that the aleph has no vowel. It is simply silent. It's quiescent. So when you pronounce the word reshit, you're not actually pronouncing that aleph. It just quiesces, they say. So now let's talk about nouns. Nouns can either be masculine or feminine. Generally speaking, masculine words take no ending. They just are. So for example, melech, king, no ending. Feminine words will often take an a ending, or they will end with a tav. This is the one I want you to remember for now. A is very, very common. Melech is king. Malka is queen. So you see the comets hey ending. So masculine, you generally will have no ending in the singular. Feminine, you will have an a or a tav ending in the singular. Then in the plural, you have the ending im. And in the feminine plural, you have the ending ot. So the word melech will become melachim. There's your im ending. And the word Torah, which you probably have all heard, which is a feminine word, Torah. In the plural, we'll lose the a ending and will become Torot. Torot. So im is the plural for a masculine word. Ot is the general plural for a feminine word. So if we write that out, masculine, feminine, singular, plural, we see melech, Torah, melachim, and Torot. There is a dual form, and that ending is aim. So the word for hand is yad. If you have two hands, you have yadaim. Yadaim. A foot is a regel. 2 feet would be rag laim. Raglaim. So it's a dual ending. Oftentimes, things that come in natural pairs of two, like hands and feet, different body parts, they will have a dual ending. Not all words have a dual form, but if you see it, it will end in aim. When words have an ending added to them, often it will cause changes to the vowels. So, davar, if you make it a plural and put im on the end, the accent was originally here. When you put the ending on, the accent pulls toward the end. It shifts. And it makes you have to get through the first part of the word quicker. So you say davar in the singular, but davarim in the plural. So to get to the accented syllable, you often go quicker, and that does things to how these vowels are pronounced. So if you listen, davar and davarim, something happens in particular to that vowel. So what is it? Davar goes to dvarim in the plural. That comets reduced. It reduced to a 𝀭. Now there are patterns that we see that are incredibly common when accents shift toward the end. There are reductions that we see very regularly. So I'd like to explain them now. When an ending is added to a word and the accent shifts, there are two rules that we have to remember. First, if we divide the syllables up, this is where the accent is. So this is called the tonic syllable, where the tone is. This is called the pretonic, and this is called the pro-pretonic. And all that means is the tone is here, this is the one that's before the tone, and this is two before the tone. Now, here are the rules. If the accent shifts here, if you haven't, you start at the first syllable. If you have a comets or a 𝀭in an open pro-pretonic syllable, and that's this one, it will reduce. So either of these in an open pro-pretonic syllable, it will reduce to a 𝀭. And that'll be it. So davar will go to dvarim. Now that may not seem like a big deal right now. The reason that it's important is as you continue to read Hebrew, you'll notice an awful lot of weird looking shifts in vowels underneath of words, underneath of consonants, and you'll want to know why did it do that. If you can remember these couple of rules that I'm telling you now, it will help you recognize the changes that are taking place. So rule number 1, a comets or a 𝀭in an open pro-pretonic syllable will reduce to 𝀭. Rule number 2, if you don't have one of these in an open pro-pretonic syllable, then you go to the next syllable, the pretonic syllable, the syllable right before where the tone is, where the accent is. And if you have a 𝀭there, it in an open syllable, so in an open pretonic syllable, that will reduce to 𝀭. So you go to the pro-pretonic syllable first. If it's open, if there's a comets or 𝀭, then you reduce it to 𝀭. If there isn't, you go to an open pretonic syllable, and if there's a 𝀭 there, then it will reduce to 𝀭. So an example of this would be the word shofet, a judge. So if you put the eem ending on it for plural, shoftim, and you divide it up into syllables, make sure that cholim stays there. You go to your, here's where your tone is, your tonic syllable, your pretonic, and your pro-pretonic. You start here. Do you have an open syllable? Yes, you do. Is there a comets or a 𝀭 in it? No, there's not. So you leave this syllable, nothing done, and you go to this syllable. Is it open? Yes. Is there a 𝀭? Yes. So this 𝀭 will reduce to 𝀭. Shofetim. And that's it. So in normal noun patterns, if you have the accent shift, if you have an open pro-pretonic syllable, and it has a comets or a tzere, you reduce it to 𝑒𝑭. If there's not, you go to the pretonic syllable. If there's a tzere there and it's open, you reduce it to 𝑒𝑭, and that's it. There's another class of nouns. They're called segolate nouns, and they act in an interesting way. Segolate nouns are characterized by the pattern with the accent on the first syllable. So a word that we see all the time that follows this pattern is melech, melech. Notice the sagol pattern and the accent on the first syllable. Melech. This is a segolate noun. Notice the word sagol. Segolate. They have a very distinct pattern when it comes to the plurals. All of them, when you have an eem ending and the accent shifts, they will go to 𝑒𝑭 comets. So our word melech would go to melachim, melachim. This 𝑒𝑭 comets pattern is standard for segolates. So if they go to the plural, 𝑒𝑎, melachim. Now, if you remember those guttural letters tend to like composite 𝑒𝑭. If you remember those from an earlier lesson, they tend to like composite 𝑒𝑭. They don't want a simple 𝑒𝑭 underneath of them. So, for example, in the common word for slave, servant, eved, it's a segolate. Notice the two sagols and the accent on the first syllable. That means that when this is pluralized, the stress moves and your pattern, you want to be 𝑒𝑭 comets. However, because this is a guttural, it doesn't like simple 𝑒𝑭s. Instead, you will get a compound 𝑒𝑭, avadim. This is very common for guttural letters, a composite 𝑒𝑭 instead of a simple 𝑒𝑭. I'm going to talk about 3 more interesting changes that take place when plural endings are added to words. The first is contractions. So there are 2 vowel patterns that will contract. The first is aya, aya. So in the word zayat, aya. When you pluralize a word that has this vowel pattern in it, you don't say zayatim. This vowel pattern goes to a, zaytim. So aya will go to a. Another example would be aisle. If the ending eem is added to the word and the accent shifts, aya will go to a lim. So the aya vowel pattern shifts to a. A similar contraction takes place with ave. ave. So the word aven, trouble, if it's pluralized, this ave vowel pattern will contract to o, onim. This vav was probably originally pronounced like a W, so wow. So if you think about, instead of ave, it was probably awe, awe, o. So ave will contract to o. The last thing that I want to talk about when adding plurals is the ending eh. So the word 🀭, a seer, when you add an im ending to it, you don't get 🀭 im. This segol hey ending will drop off completely. So the segol hey will drop off completely, and the ending im will then be added, 🀭. So 🀭 will go to 🀭. The same is true for the word for shepherd. רואה. If you want to say shepherds, the ending will drop off, and im will be added, ro'im. Ro'eh to ro'im. So the ending simply drops off when a plural ending is added. The last thing I'd like to talk about today are some common irregular plurals. So we've talked a lot about the common endings that you'll see in the noun patterns, the vowel patterns, what the endings are, the changes that take place. But sometimes there are words that just are odd. And I just want to give you a couple here. The first is av, father, which you would think would go to avim, but it doesn't. It's avot. So av goes to avot. Ish, for man, goes to anashim. Notice here that the guttural, instead of taking a simple shava, takes a compound shava. But ish, anashim. Isha, woman, wife, goes to nashim. Nashim. Isha, nashim. The word for house, bait, which has this aye vowel pattern, goes to batim. Bait, batim. The word for son, bain, will go to banim. And the word for daughter, bat, will go to banot. Bat, banot. The last one that I'll show you is the word for day, yom. Yom goes to yamim. Yom, yamim. In my experience, the best way to remember these irregular plurals is to say them in pairs. So av, avot, ish, anashim, ishan, nashim, and so on. Say them together. They're irregular. It's just best to memorize them. But that's it for our introduction to nouns. In our next lesson, we'll begin to look at the adjective. So stay with us.